A very warm welcome to you. It's a pleasure as always to have you for company on this edition of Almond Finance and Wealth Report, your number one source for all the latest happenings in the world of business. My name is Margaret Mary Busibor. You're welcome. On the lineup this week, the Joseph Ayo Babalola University, Ikeji, Arakeji, Osun State, is the very first university in Nigeria to run a full-fledged department that awards BSc in Entrepreneurship. This week, we will join Faith in an exclusive interview with the Vice Chancellor, Professor Shola Fajano, as they x-ray the Jabu model on entrepreneurship. Professor Fajano said that the infrastructural challenges in Nigeria should be seen as an opportunity for entrepreneurs to excel by finding solutions. Do take a listen.
For every challenge, there must always be a solution. And that is even the philosophy behind entrepreneurship in the first place. You're an entrepreneur because there is a need in society that needs to be met, to be filled. So you don't take that challenge as something that for which you now fold your arms and resign to fate.
On this edition also, we will bring you highlights of the 2018 Business Day Economic Outlook Conference that took place recently in Lagos at the Whitbaker Hotel, Ikoyi. The theme was navigating from recovery to growth.
What point are we making when we are borrowing to fund subsidies? They're subsidizing PMS. You don't have the political courage to take away the subsidies. You are subsidizing tariff for electricity. And in the past 2 years, you have created a $2.5 billion liquidity gap in the electricity sector. The sector has almost collapsed.
Plus, of course, all the other extras we bring you on the program. Details shortly after this break. Please stay with us.
All right, very warm welcome to you. It's a pleasure to have you join us on the program this week. Today we'll be talking to a very important personality. I'm talking about the Vice Chancellor of the Joseph Ayo Babalola University, Professor Shola Fajano. Thank you so very much, sir, for joining us. Thank you very much. We'll be looking at the famous Jabu model on entrepreneurship. But before I get to that, in Nigeria today, there are so many faith-based universities, but I really want to know what sets Jabu apart from others.
Joseph Ayo Babalola University is a product of divine instruction. It was not just established to make money, but rather as part of the contributions of the church, the Christ Apostolic Church, the founders, to impacting society positively. The philosophy behind it is that we should be able to produce a crop of young Nigerians who can take the future in their own hands, make maximum impact on themselves, on their families, and on the society, and indeed the entire nation. Because the founders also realized that without social security, you cannot have national security. And so if you are able to catch them young and you place them squarely within the will of God for their lives, they will not depart from it eventually when they get older. That's the philosophy. Apart from the strategy of instilling discipline in them, which they will carry on later on in life, it was also important for the youth to key into entrepreneurship, because it was discovered at that time, even as early as 2000, that the scourge of unemployment, especially of youth, has reached a level that, concerned stakeholders cannot just ignore. And therefore, if the jobs are not there, why don't we produce graduates who will be able to produce jobs rather than look for jobs?
It's still a major challenge in the Nigerian society today.
Yeah.
What would you say is responsible for that?
Yes, because we are living in a society where one thing leads to another. And before you know what is happening, you're just taking a vicious circle. You're moving in a circle. A society is poor because it is poor. So at the end of the day, how do you get out of the poverty? Unemployment affects livelihood of people. And so if you don't have the means of livelihood, then how do you get out of that poverty syndrome? So I agree with you. The unemployment scourge is still very much with us. In fact, it is accentuating, it is increasing every day. And in the circumstance of our youth, it is something that has to do with, they are now victims of unemployment, and their situation is compounding their employability. So I want to introduce the concept of employability.
Yeah, because a lot of people, I've heard people put the blame at the doorstep of the likes of you, universities, that turn out people that are not employable.
Mm-hmm. If they are not employable, then they will not be employed. Yeah. That means we are increasing the number, the army of young people who are not employed. This will happen because if a young person does not have a job to do, no visible means of livelihood, he will go into drugs. The devil will find work for idle hands. You now find out that the state of drug use, abuse of their sense of decency, all of these things affect their studies eventually when they decide to go to school. And so even when they graduate, they have come up as graduates who have been victimized, who have become victims, and who are now made even more unemployable because they don't have the traits to be employed anymore. Imagine a young person presents himself at interview table and he's not even able to define his subject matter, or he's not coherent because he had been living under an environment of highness, under drugs. Such a person will not be successful at the interview. So he joins the army of unemployed. But the reason he became unemployable is because he was trying to cope with the situation of unemployment and poverty. But unfortunately, he had used the wrong coping mechanism. So all those drugs, and even those who are not even using drugs among them, the students, some of them will believe that the fortune of their seniors who graduated 4, 5, 10 years ago is nothing to write home about in the labor market. May now have the feeling that, well, why should I overkill myself? Why should I go for the best grades? Lecturer, just give me 40%, let my people go. So you find out that they are not really applying everything they have to their studies because of the feeling that upon graduation, they will not get a job in the first place. And many of them do not even believe that superior grades is what will get them to get a job. So this is a very lamentable situation because the motivation for superior grades among our students is far reducing. The tendency among them to go into drugs and apply all kinds of wrong coping capacity is also there. All of these things make them to be unemployable at the end of the day.
So, would you say it's not just the problem of the university, as a lot of people tend to...
I want to assure you that the universities are doing very well with regards to the appropriate curricula to apply. We exchange notes with our colleagues abroad. We know what is happening in the MITs, in the Harvards of this world. We are not suffering from ideas. What we lack is not ideas. We know the right curricula to follow.
Okay, so Prof, let me quickly take you up on that. You do find, as you said, what we lack is no idea. You do find oftentimes that people from different sectors of the Nigerian economy, they go out, even the Nigerian police, and they excel. So the question is, what really is the problem? Is it the Nigerian society that tends to cage in people's spirit of excellence, if you will?
Well, now you're talking about spirit. There is maybe, even if you don't go full-blown spiritual dimensions, maybe there's a virus in our system that is eating deep into our fabrics and destroying many good things that would have applied and made to work for us. It is just there. Over and over again, the Nigerian educational system had cried for proper funding. Proper funding of the education sector is important. Because if you do not fund education sector as appropriate, then what you get is probably like what one of my colleagues said from the US. He said, we are just teaching expired education. That's what we are giving to our students. Expired education. A lecturer is dusting his 20-year-old lecture notes just to give. Of course, that is reducing now. I must assure Nigerians that is reducing. Because those of us who manage the system insist that our lecturers must be up to date. They must make sure that their course materials are learner-friendly. Because again, the students are into information technology. They want to use computers. They want to use iPads to study. So lecturers have to also be future-ready if you are going to be able to cope with the demands for teaching. The new pedagogy is information technology driven. And so our lecturers are doing very well in that regard. But the problem still goes to government. We have to fund education as appropriate. If you don't do that, then you get to a point where school fees will be charged and access to education is further closed. You now get to a point where very few eventually get education. And yet, we all need this education. Last year, about 1.7 million Nigerians took Jabu. We were able to place only 400,000. 1.3 million, where are they today? Where have we driven them to? To go and fend for themselves? To go into all kinds of demeaning work, and the jobs are not even there, and they are just they are vulnerable and can be easily converted to negative use. And that's what I'm talking about: national security and social security. Education is a key element in social security, and it has to be addressed squarely.
Welcome back. Moving on now, we'll bring you highlights of the 2018 Economic Outlook Conference recently organized in Lagos by Business Day Conferences. Speaking during her presentation, the Director General Debt Management Office, Ms. Patience Uniha, said that for businesses to survive, they need a combination of equities and debt borrowing. Enjoy.
annual Business Day Economic Outlook Conference is a platform for stakeholders to share thoughts on how to move the economy forward. The 2018 edition with the theme, Navigating from Recovery to Growth, was recently held at the Whitbaker Hotel, Ikoyi. It once again provided an opportunity for economists, policymakers to discuss and provide plausible options for navigating these dual growth economic pathways in 2018. Delivering his keynote address, the special guest of honor, Dr. Kechuku Enelama, Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, said that the Economic Council is to partner with the private sector on initiatives to ease business operations.
There are many stubborn issues to do with industry and manufacturing and production. But I would argue that the best way to do it is to partner with the private sector, both in the understanding of the problems, in the conceptualization or the coming up with solutions, and the actual implementation. And that's really what this Industrial Council is about. The good news is that it's off to an excellent start. I couldn't have wished for a better start. I mean, we started about 6 months ago. I think we've met again every month. There is a lot of enthusiasm from the private sector. If anything, more people want to join the council, but the point we always make is that the council is merely the body that brings it together. A lot of the work needs to happen outside the council anyway. And what we've done in the last 6 months is to identify a number of initiatives that are some of the most pressing for industry, and then to come up with a plan to implement them. And those initiatives we identified are up to 49. In the interest of time, I won't go into them. Let me just say that in identifying them, we had to break into 5 subgroups. There was a group on policy, dealing with issues around policy. There was a group on financing, issues around funding and financing and long-term financing. There was a group on vocational training and skills acquisition, a group on trade and market access, and a group on, critical infrastructure, arguably the most important. And then they came up with initiatives. And these were all led by leaders in business as well as ministers in government and very senior government officials. So there's every reason to believe, and there's again strong support from the presidency, from the cabinet, from the government. I really wish that we will be an implementation-minded, oriented government. And that's really what I want. It's not so much that you did everything, but the few things you chose to do, that you actually got them done. And please challenge us if you think there are ways we can improve in our doing. Because at times, you know what the issues are, but it's just that it's still easier said than done. We can talk implementation all we like, but we have to implement for it to become reality.
Also speaking at the conference, Ms. Patience Oniha, Director General, Debt Management Office, DMO, stated that for businesses to survive, they need a combination of equities and debt borrowing.
The government borrows both for itself and also to provide opportunities for the private sector to borrow. Okay, so what did the DMO do this many years with the sovereign borrowing? So we're talking about sovereign borrowing. We of course tried to ensure that there was a domestic fixed income market. There really wasn't one years back. If you look at years before 2003, there wasn't really any. We had an equities market. We had treasury bills, but there wasn't really an active market. The truth is that for businesses, they need a combination of equity and debt for business. That is really the strategy everywhere. So if you don't have that component, if you don't have a debt capital market, it's almost like you don't have a complete market. We also had the money market. Let me not take that away. We had an active interbank money market, an equities market, but we really never had a debt capital market. And that market is important, not only for the government, but also for corporates. So what we're able to achieve was sort of facilitate the creation of a debt capital market. And we had people here like Coco, the CEO of FMDQ OTC, who have taken it to a higher level where we now have a securities exchange that is almost entirely focused on debt capital markets. And that has become very useful for us because I believe many people here, as well as the international community, they don't need to talk to us if they're looking for what are bond prices, what are bond yields, what were the rates 2 weeks ago, the auction rates. They simply go there and they can access it, analyze it, and that helps them to make an investment decision.
The National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, will soon release the country's overall GDP growth figures in 2017. The data will confirm Nigeria's exit from recession in the third quarter of 2017 when the economy grew by 1.40%. In his presentation, Dr. Yemi Kale, Statistician General of the Federation, said that although agriculture employs 48% of the workforce and contributes more to the GDP, productivity in terms of employees' wages is abysmally low. Delivering his paper on the theme, the guest speaker, Mr. Bismarck Rwani, Managing Director, Financial Derivatives Company Limited, gave an overview of what to expect in the economy this year.
GDP growth 2.2% in 2018 compared to 2.6% population growth. Growth projections are based on oil. Pre-election spending and further depletion of the naira will add to inflationary pressures. Political deadlock will stifle economic activity and delay business-friendly reforms because of the National Assembly deadlock. Stock market rally, initial earnings before a major correction. Be careful. Active portfolio managers and those who know what they're doing will make money, but amateurs are going to lose their shirts. Many stocks are overpriced. Treasury bill rates will continue to trend downwards. CBN will not reduce CRR for now. Multiple exchange rates will persist with no convergence, and external reserves will get to $42 billion before coming down. The federal government will continue to pay subsidies, will announce aggressive salary program for segments of the rail network. APC will prepare to defend their mandate. Internal squabbling will put the party in an awkward position. New board members will be sworn in. Some ministers will quit to contest as governors.
The high points of the annual economic outlook is a panel discussion. Panelists this year were Mr. Austin Avuru, Chief Executive Officer, Surplus Petroleum Development Company PLC, Mr. Okoyemi Agbaje, Managing Director, RTC Advisory Services Limited, Mr. Taiwo Keowo, DMD FBN Kest Merchant Bank, Mr. Bola Onodele Koko, Managing Director, FMDDQ OTC Securities Exchange, Dr. Kechuku Enelama, Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Yemi Kale, Statistician General of the Federation, Ms. Patience Oniha, DG DMO, and Bismarck Rwani. Moderator was Mr. Frank Aibogo. In his submission, Mr. Bola Onodele Koko said that the Nigerian economy can never thrive on fixed exchange rate.
This economy will never thrive on fixed exchange rate. Never ever. And by now we should have learned the lessons. We've just started a new regime. I mean, now we have windows. In the past we had auction systems. Now we have windows. The question most foreign portfolio investors ask me is the sustainability of the I&E FX window. Everybody is still worried, and that speaks to the fragility that was mentioned earlier by one of the speakers, where there is no, certainty of policy, integrity of regulation, the legal framework. We can't unlock. I mean, a case in point is the housing ecosystem in this country. We need to really disrupt that for capital to come in. If you do not have the laws on foreclosure, the laws on eviction, and when you have arguments with people, they're quick to tell you, oh, why do you want to foreclose one or two people that cannot pay mortgages? But you are losing sight of the capital that could come into this country to bolster and galvanize the housing development, deliver homes to Nigerians, affordable homes in so many different ways.
Although it is just 2 months into 2018 and the economic data is already exciting given the fact that the World Bank has forecast a 2.5% growth of the economy, the risk still remains as the oil prices are retreating and politics is beginning to overshadow economies in policy making. Many believe that all these will have implications on the country's economic turnout this year.
Alright, that is our time with the program this week. Many thanks for keeping the date with us. Join us again next week, same time, same station for a fresh package. But in the meantime, feel free as always to connect with us on all our social media platforms. Don't forget that you can still join over 300 plus world leaders at the 13th World Hackathon and InsurTech Conference, taking place at the Dusithani Hotel, Dubai, UAE on the 9th of April. All you need to do is visit our website at www.almondfinancereports.com and use the code ALMD15 to register so you can get a 15% discount. Trust me, you'll be glad you did. Once again, my name is Margaret Mary Osiobor. Thanks for joining us this week. Until next time, bye-bye.